In a hall packed with hundreds of guests, my daughter smiled for photos, then snapped her eyes to me and said into the mic, "Don't clap for him." I reached out anyway. She shoved my hand away and announced, "Your presence is a stain on my success. I wish you never showed up." Someone in the front row nodded like they'd rehearsed it. Then my daughter turned slightly and read the next line off her phone. "Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments." The first thing I noticed wasn't her voice. It was the timing. The DJ had just faded the background music down, soft and clean, the way they do right before a speech, so the room naturally leans in. The lights were warm, flattering, golden enough to make everyone look proud, forgiving enough to hide nervousness. The banner behind the stage said, "Congrats, grad," in big silver letters, and the smell of sheet cake and perfume hung in the air like we were all sharing the same breath. My daughter stood on stage with the microphone in her hand, smiling for photos. That smile wasn't new. She'd been practicing it for years. The kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," even when she isn't, even when she's about to hurt someone. I stood near the front row, close enough that people could see I belonged there, close enough that strangers could assume I was part of her story. I had worn my best jacket, the one that still held its shape at the shoulders. I'd gotten my hair cut 2 days earlier. I'd even practiced what I would say when I got my moment with her. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, proud sentence a father should be allowed to speak. I didn't know I was walking into a trap. The announcer had just finished reading her achievements. Honors, scholarship, student leadership. People clap the way they clap when they want to be seen clapping. My ex-wife sat in the second row, perfectly composed, hands folded in her lap. Her posture was immaculate, not a hair out of place. She looked like someone who had already decided how this night would be remembered. And then my daughter lifted the mic slightly, almost casual. The room naturally went quiet. I heard the soft click of phones waking up, screens lighting, cameras opening. It wasn't loud, but it was synchronized in a way that made my stomach tighten. Then she snapped her eyes straight to me, not a glance. "A lock!" And she said it, clean and cold, right into the mic. "Don't clap for him." The sentence landed heavier than a shout because it came with no emotion at all, like she was giving an instruction, like the room was supposed to understand. A few people chuckled awkwardly, the way strangers do when they're not sure if something is a joke, but they want to stay safe. I smiled reflexively, the weak smile a man gives when he's trying to keep his dignity from sliding off his face. I stepped forward anyway because my body hadn't caught up to the humiliation yet, because a father in public still believes he has a role. I reached out my hand. My daughter looked at it like it disgusted her. Then she shoved it away, not gently, not politely. A sharp push, like brushing off lint. Hundreds of people saw it, and then she leaned into the mic again, closer this time, almost intimate, like she was confessing something important. "Your presence is a stain on my success," she said. "I wish you had never even shown up." My throat tightened instantly, like my body was trying to swallow the moment before it could poison me. I felt heat rush behind my eyes. I had no time to prepare for tears, no way to stop them. In that bright, open space, there's nowhere to hide anything, especially shame. The hall didn't explode. That's what shocked me. There was no wave of outrage, no collective gasp, no, "Whoa, that's harsh." Instead, there was a pause, a strange, tidy silence, like everyone was waiting for what came next. My ex-wife didn't move. She didn't look surprised. She didn't cover her mouth. She didn't even blink fast. She just stared ahead, calm as stone, like she'd already heard this speech in private. I stood there with my hand still half raised, like an idiot reaching for something that wasn't mine anymore. My face started to burn. I tried to swallow, but my mouth was dry. I heard someone in the front row whisper, barely audible, "About time." Not, "That's awful." Not, "Is he okay?" Just approval. That's when I realized the humiliation wasn't just personal. It was social. It was a decision. My daughter turned slightly, just a small shift of her shoulders, and I saw it. Her phone. In her other hand, down by her waist, screen glowing. She glanced at it, and her eyes flicked across the text like she was reading a grocery list. Then she lifted the mic again, and the way she spoke next made my skin go cold. Because it didn't sound like her. It sounded formatted, like it had been written for maximum effect. "I'm grateful," she said, voice steady, "for everyone who supported me when I didn't have the support I deserved." People murmured. A few claps started. My daughter kept going, eyes dipping to her phone between lines. She wasn't speaking. She was delivering. And suddenly it made sense. The timing. The DJ lowering the music. The phone's already ready. This wasn't an outburst. This was a performance. I stepped back slowly, careful not to stumble, careful not to give them the satisfaction of chaos. The tears were already there, but I kept my head tilted slightly downward so they wouldn't shine under the stage lights. I could feel people staring, not with compassion, with curiosity, the kind that makes you feel like an exhibit. My daughter continued her speech, now safer in the praise. She thanked teachers, coaches, friends. She spoke about resilience, about choosing peace, about letting go of what doesn't serve you. Every line sounded like it had been polished by someone older, someone strategic. Then she smiled again and said, "Let's be practical." The phrase hit me like a slap, because my daughter didn't talk like that. My ex-wife did. That was her phrase, her tone, her favorite way of turning cruelty into maturity. I stared at my ex-wife then, just for a second. She didn't look at me. She looked at my daughter, proud, satisfied, like the stain had been addressed. I turned away from the stage and walked toward the side aisle, trying to disappear into a crowd that wouldn't make space for me. But the crowd stayed tight. People pretended not to see me, which was worse than staring. They leaned closer to each other, whispering like this was the most interesting part of the night. In the hallway outside the main hall, I found a quiet corner near the coat rack. I stood there and wiped my face with the inside of my sleeve like a teenager, hating myself for how small I felt. The muffled applause from inside the hall reached me in waves. My daughter was being celebrated, and my humiliation had become part of the celebration. That's when my phone buzzed, a message preview from a number I didn't recognize. "You shouldn't have come. She warned you." My fingers went numb, because it wasn't just that she wanted to hurt me. It was that people knew it was coming. People were prepared. People had been told. And suddenly the silence in that hall made perfect sense, because this wasn't the first time they'd heard the story. It was just the first time they watched it happen. And I realized, standing there alone by the coat rack, that the real battle wasn't with my daughter. It was with whoever had written that script. I stayed in that hallway longer than I should have, letting the applause fade in and out like distant weather. People passed me in small groups, smiling, carrying plates of cake, pretending not to notice the grown man standing by the coat rack with wet eyes and a tight jaw. A couple of strangers gave me that look. Quick glance, quick retreat. The kind of look that says, "I saw something, but I don't want to be involved." That's how social punishment works. It doesn't require aggression, just avoidance. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Different number. "Don't make a scene. Let her have her night." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Let her have her night. As if my humiliation was a reasonable price for her joy. I slipped the phone into my pocket and forced myself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Control first, pain later. When I finally walked back into the hall, the DJ had raised the music again. People were clapping louder now, safer now, because the ugly part had passed. My daughter had returned to her photogenic smile, standing with classmates near the stage while parents took pictures. She looked like a star. I looked like a mistake someone forgot to erase. My ex-wife was already moving through the crowd, hugging relatives and laughing softly, taking compliments like they were currency. She saw me near the side entrance, and her eyes narrowed slightly. Not anger, not sadness. Warning. She walked over with a paper plate in her hand. Are you done? She asked quietly. It was the same tone she used years ago when she wanted me to stop talking in front of friends. I kept my voice steady. I didn't do anything, I said. She smiled without warmth. You did by showing up, she replied. Then she leaned closer, just enough that her perfume hit my nose. Clean and expensive, the scent of a life I'd paid for and been pushed out of. Don't embarrass her, she said. Not tonight. Not the first time. Not the shove. Not the microphone. My reaction. That's what she called embarrassment. I glanced past her shoulder and saw my daughter taking pictures, arm around her friends. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaken. She was energized, like the humiliation had fed something inside her. My ex-wife followed my gaze and her lips tightened. She's finally free, she said, as if that justified everything. Free. From what? From having a father in the room? Before I could respond, a family friend, Gary, someone I'd known for years, walked up with 2 plastic cups of punch. He smiled at my ex-wife first, then looked at me like I was an awkward guest he hadn't expected. Hey man, he said. You all right? The question sounded polite, but his eyes didn't hold it long enough to mean it. My ex-wife answered for me. He's fine, she said. Just emotional. Emotional. That label again, soft, dismissive. A clean way to make me seem unstable without saying it directly. Gary nodded, relieved. The room likes simple explanations. Then he said something that made my stomach drop. She wrote a great speech, he offered. Really powerful. Wrote, not gave, not said. Wrote, I looked at him. She wrote it? Gary paused. His face tightened, just slightly, like he realized he'd stepped on something sharp. Well, he said carefully, you know, she got help. People helped. People. Plural. My ex-wife cut in smoothly. Her counselor helped, she said, and her aunt, and me. We wanted it to be clear. Clear. That was the word she used when she meant final. My throat tightened again, but this time it wasn't tears. It was clarity. So this wasn't just my daughter's anger spilling out in a reckless moment. This was edited, approved, practiced. A performance with multiple adults behind it. Gary looked uncomfortable now. He sipped his punch quickly, like he wanted to wash the moment out of his mouth. My ex-wife leaned closer again, voice low. You can leave now, she said, before you make this worse. I nodded once, as if I agreed, and I did leave, not because I was broken, but because I finally understood the terrain. You don't fight in a room where everyone has been briefed. As I walked toward the exit, I heard the laughter behind me soften, then return, like a wave closing after a body disappears under it. Outside, the night air felt sharp and honest. The parking lot lights threw harsh shadows across rows of cars. I stood near my old sedan, keys in hand, not opening the door yet. I checked my phone. I had 3 more messages. She told everyone the truth. Let it go. Don't ruin her future. Future. That word made my jaw clench, because it told me what this was really about. Image, reputation, a clean narrative she could carry into her next chapter, and I was the stain they needed to publicly scrub off. I sat in my car and stared through the windshield at the glow of the hall windows. I could see silhouettes moving inside, celebrating. Then my phone lit up with a notification from the family group chat. Not the main one, a smaller one. A thread I wasn't supposed to be in, probably because someone forgot to remove my number after changing phones. The title at the top froze me. Graduation plan, checkmark. My thumb hovered for a second before I opened it. Messages filled the screen like a confession. My ex-wife, stick to the timing. DJ lowers music at 7:10. My daughter, I'll do it right after the scholarship mention. My sister-in-law, make sure someone records from front row. Gary, I'll keep him away after. My brother, don't let him talk. My mouth went dry. I scrolled further. My daughter had typed, I want him to feel it. And my ex-wife replied, good. That's how people learn. I stared at the words until they blurred, not because I was shocked anymore, because I finally had proof that the humiliation wasn't emotional. It was engineered. I didn't reply. I didn't call anyone. I took screenshots, slowly, carefully, making sure I captured names, timestamps, every detail. Then I saved them to the cloud. Because in that moment, I understood something important about social destruction. If they planned it like an event, then the consequences could be scheduled too. And I drove home in silence, not crying anymore, just replaying their plan in my mind like a map. The house felt colder than it should have when I stepped inside, not physically, socially, like the walls already knew I'd been publicly removed from the family and were waiting for me to accept it. I hung my jacket up gently, the way you do when you're trying not to create noise. My phone sat heavy in my pocket like a second heartbeat. Proof, paper trail, receipts. In the kitchen, the overhead light was still on, a sink full of dishes, a note on the counter in my ex-wife's handwriting from earlier that day, something about picking up ice and extra napkins, ordinary details. That's what makes betrayal so disgusting. It hides inside normal. I sat at the table and opened the screenshots again, read them slowly, not to torture myself, to study them. They had assigned roles the way you assign seats at a wedding. Who lowers the music? Who records? Who distracts? Who blocks? And the part that stayed in my head wasn't my daughter's line. It was my brother's. Don't let him talk. That told me everything about what they feared. Not confrontation, not anger. Words, witnesses, contradictions. They didn't want me speaking because speaking interrupts scripts. So I made a decision that night, alone at my kitchen table with the light buzzing overhead. I would not argue with them. I would document them. The next morning I did what any reasonable father would do after being humiliated publicly. I went to work. My shift started at 6. Warehouse lights, steel shelves, scanners beeping, guys in hoodies drinking gas station coffee and pretending their lives weren't falling apart. That routine saved me, because public humiliation has a side effect. People expect you to collapse. They expect chaos. They expect you to prove the narrative they wrote about you. Instead, I showed up on time. I did my job. And while my body moved through routine, my mind did something calmer. It planned. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not yet. That would have sounded like drama, like bitterness, like a man trying to ruin his daughter's big moment. So I started with something smarter. I started with questions. At lunch, I texted Jenna, the cousin who had always been careful with her words. Me. Were you at the party? Jenna. Yes. Me. Did you hear what she said? A pause. Jenna. Everyone did. I didn't add emotion. I didn't describe my tears. I didn't rant. I sent one screenshot. Just one. The one titled, Graduation Plan Checkmark. Her reply came fast. Oh my God, this was planned? That was the sound I needed, not sympathy. Confirmation. Because when the word planned enters people's mouths, the narrative flips from family conflict to setup, and setups make people uncomfortable. Over the next few days, I moved quietly. I didn't post anything. I didn't threaten. I didn't warn. I simply allowed the truth to be seen by the right eyes, in the right order. One aunt, one cousin, one family friend. Always private, always calm, always like I was asking for advice. I don't know what to do with this, I'd say, sending the screenshot without explanation, and every time the reaction was the same. Silence first, then a short message, then more questions, because they all felt the same thing I felt in that hall. Something didn't match. My daughter's line sounded emotional, but this sounded coordinated, and coordinated cruelty makes people nervous, because it means it could happen to them too. A week later, I got the first visible consequence. My ex-wife called, not to apologize, to negotiate. Her voice was controlled, almost gentle, like she was speaking to a child who might misbehave. We need to talk, she said. I stayed calm. About what? She exhaled softly. People are asking questions, she said, and it's making your daughter uncomfortable. There it was. Not, I'm sorry, not. That went too far. Only discomfort. Hers. Which people? I asked. She hesitated. That hesitation was the crack. Because she wanted to say everyone, but she couldn't admit she was losing control. Then she switched tactics. You have to understand, she said. You weren't always supportive. Supportive. The calm lie again, repeated until it becomes truth. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I only asked one question. Why did you schedule the DJ timing? I said. The line went quiet. I could hear her breathing. Then she spoke slowly, careful. That wasn't what it was, she said. I almost smiled. Because once someone starts explaining, they've already left the high ground. Then what was it? I asked. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she said, don't do this. Meaning, don't turn the light on. I kept my voice even. I'm not doing anything, I said. I'm just letting people see what you wrote. She hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days after that, my daughter texted me for the first time in months. No greeting, no warmth, just a sentence that sounded like it came from the same script. Why are you sending that to people? I stared at it for a long time before replying. Then I typed, because you read it off your phone. A minute passed, then 3 dots appeared. Typing. They disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, she sent, you're making me look bad. Not, I shouldn't have said that. Not, I'm sorry. Just image. That's when I understood my daughter hadn't just learned cruelty. She had learned management. I replied calmly, you made yourself public. No threats, no insults, just truth. She didn't respond. The shift became visible in small, humiliating ways for them. At a neighborhood barbecue, my ex-wife walked into a conversation and it stopped. Not dramatically, just paused, then restarted with different words. People smiled too tight, asked quick questions, moved on. That's social consequence. Quiet. Polite. Suffocating. I wasn't celebrated. I wasn't even comforted. But something far more powerful happened. They stopped being admired. My ex-wife started posting more family photos online, more captions about pride and resilience. But the comments changed. Shorter. Colder. Some people didn't comment at all. My daughter's friends started looking at her differently too. Not openly, but enough that she could feel it. Because when a young person publicly humiliates a parent, people can tolerate it if it looks spontaneous. But planned humiliation, that has a smell. And once people smell it, they don't want it on them. A month later, I saw my daughter at a small community event, another graduation-related gathering at the school. She was there for photos with teachers trying to maintain the shine. I stayed at the back of the room, not hiding, observing. She spotted me and walked over quickly, anger controlled behind her eyes. You're ruining everything, she hissed, low so nobody could hear. I looked at her and kept my voice calm. I stayed quiet at your party, I said. I didn't interrupt you. I didn't shout. Her jaw clenched. And now? She demanded. I held her gaze. Now people are asking questions, I said. She looked around nervously, scanning faces like she felt the room turning. Because she did. Then she said the real confession without realizing it. They're acting like I'm cruel. I nodded once. You planned it, I said. That's why. She stared at me as if she'd never considered that planning made it worse, that it removed the excuse of emotion. She swallowed, and in that moment I saw it, the first time she truly felt consequence, not punishment, not anger from me, the slow social discomfort of being watched, of being remembered, of having a reputation attached to something ugly. She stepped back slightly, voice smaller now. I was hurt, she said. I didn't argue with her pain. I didn't validate her cruelty either. I just said the only sentence that mattered. Being hurt doesn't give you a script. Then I walked away. No victory speech, no dramatic ending, just distance. I still think about that hall sometimes. The lights, the microphones, the phones lifted like little witnesses. But I think about something else more now. the moment their confidence cracked. Because social destruction doesn't look like chaos. It looks like silence. It looks like people stepping away. It looks like conversations ending when you arrive. And it ends one simple way. People stopped believing them. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening.